Hey, I'm Brian. I'm a blacksmithing instructor, and this is a project for my beginning blacksmithing class. Today we're making a bottle opener from 1/4 by 3/4 mild steel flat bar. We'll start by making a hole in one end of the bar between 3/8 and a half an inch away from the end. I'll be punching a 3/8 inch hole here, though that size isn't critical. I've brushed off scale so it's easier to see where I'm punching the hole. I punch one side of the hole on the anvil face, turn the piece over and punch through the second side on the anvil face, then move over the pritchel hole to clear the plug. It's common for students to move to the pritchel hole too quickly. Make sure that you've punched from both sides on the anvil face before moving over the hole. As you can see, the plug is hanging on by a thread here, so I put it against the anvil edge and shear it off. Now that I've got a hole in the bar, I need to drift it open until it can fit over the horn of the anvil. In this case, I'm using my tapered punch to drift the hole, and I need to make sure I don't drive the punch so far that it wedges into the pritchel. Here I'm leaning the piece over with each hit to make sure I'm not pushing it too far. If you can't make more progress with the pritchel, you can always use the hardy hole by supporting the piece at each corner. A bolster block is also a great option if you have one. Once the hole is large enough, we can move over to the tip of the horn. We're aiming for a consistent ring thickness, so we'll start with the thickest part of the ring, which is these two corners. Once we knock these down, we'll find the next thickest part, and so on until we have a consistent size across the entire ring. Now we want to keep the ring's cross-section square, so I'm moving between the horn and the anvil face, not letting it get too thick in any one dimension. As you progress, the ring gets larger and becomes easier to keep on the horn. Instead of holding the bar from the end, you can see that I hold it from the side using flat-jawed tongs. This allows me to push my tongs in a straight line, and since I'm not squeezing the tongs too hard, the bar will pivot in the bits. If you hold the bar from the end, you end up moving your tongs around the entire horn, which is uncomfortable, and you'll often end up with hot scale raining onto your tong hand. Once I've got a consistent thickness, I'll round up the cross section of the ring. I tilt the bar against the horn and knock down the corners. Turn the piece around and knock down the other side. You might need to step around to the other side of your horn to finish the entire ring. Now that we have roughly an octagonal cross section, I'll roll the ring back and forth under light blows to round it up. This isn't strictly necessary, but I think it looks nice. Try to leave the ring slightly thick. This shape has a lot of surface area and it will scale up quickly. Often students will forge the ring to final size now, only to have the material corrode away through the next few heats. Leave it thick now and you can always thin it out more at the end if you need. Here I'm using a spring fuller to put a top and bottom fuller just below the ring. Once I have that set of fullers, I'll make a second set slightly below the first. The material left between these two sets becomes a small decorative diamond shape. Using the corners of the anvil and my crosspeen, I lightly forge the material left between these fullers. This sharpens the peaks and brings it into that diamond shape. Now I'll draw a taper from the original 3/4 inch bar down to that second set of fullers. You need to work carefully not to hit the points of your diamond. If you're struggling with this, you can always use a top tool like a flatter or a set hammer, or even the spring fuller again to clean up that taper right where it meets the diamond. The bottle opener picked up a slight bend along its length, causing the ring to hang off to one side. It's subtle, so I've highlighted it here in an obnoxious color. I need to hammer the end of the bar to straighten it, but I don't want to hit the ring or the point of my diamond directly. So instead I'll carefully hammer into one of the fullers using the peen of the hammer, just to push the bar straight. Next I cut off the bottle opener, leaving it about as long as the width of my hand. I'll knock the sharp corners off the handle a bit so it feels nicer in the hand. It only needs a light chamfer here, and you could do this with a file if you prefer. I also like to bevel the end of the handle where it's cut. It has the start of a bevel already, so I make it a little broader and smoother, which tends to make the shape look more intentional. This slightly lengthens and thins the end of the handle, which gives the whole thing better visual balance. I also like to texture one side of the handle. Again, it's not necessary, but creates some visual interest and feels nice in the hand. At a high red heat, I brush the scale off so that I'm texturing clean metal. Then, as it comes down through the low reds, I use the cross peen of the hammer to put in horizontal marks. At high temperatures, these blows would just move the metal, but at lower temperatures, the steel tends to pick up more texture. I lean my hammer left and right to create more variance in the marks. After straightening it up, I'll take one more quick pass with even more tilt in the hammer to put a few deeper marks along the corners. You can see here that it catches more light this way and has more personality than a flat bar would. The last step is to punch in the tab, that thin bit of steel that actually catches the bottle cap. I do this last so that it spends as little time in the fire as possible. I'll be using a ball-end punch or a fullering punch here, though the specific shape isn't important. I'm aiming for the mass of material just under the ring. If you start too close to the ring, you'll just pinch down a bit of the edge. We're trying to drive the punch in to create a little wave of metal and push it into the ring. You can see here I've created that wave of metal, but it's too short and thick to easily slip under a bottle cap. I'll move my punch on top of the wave and squish down all of that material that we displaced. This spreads it out, making the tab longer and thinner. I'm trying to get this about the thickness of a dime. You don't want it to be sharp, so if you end up slipping off and leaving a sharp, thin area, you can knock it back down with a small file later. Bottle caps are about an inch wide, so if your ring is bigger than that, it'll actually miss the far end of the bottle cap and won't work. If you end up with a ring that's too big, you can always tap it gently against the anvil to give the ring more of an oval shape. I tend to do this anyway as I like the effect. There's a lot of room for error in terms of the size of the ring, so after making and testing a few bottle openers, you'll develop an eye for what the correct size looks like. Brush, wax, and test it out. If it doesn't quite work, you can always heat it back up and adjust it slightly. These make a great gift, so try it out. Thanks for watching.